Hello, good people of YouTube, Mountbatten here, and today we are talking about the ship that did not have to be replaced, but was. And that is the Tier 10 Soviet heavy cruiser, the Moskva. So if we rewind time all the way back to the Soviet cruiser split, this was, good God, I think this was, what, 2 or 3 full patches ago, and by full patches I mean, like, we're in 10 now, and then we had 9 and 8. I think this is back in I think 8, when was it, 8.3, 8.4, something like that, when the Soviet cruiser line was split in two into light cruisers into heavy cruisers. And back when this announcement was made, sure, fine, if you want to start going to more in-depth tech trees and breaking up lines into, light and heavy variants, like we've seen with the American cruisers, then the British cruisers, and now the Soviet cruisers. Before this, the Soviet line was a mix of heavy and light cruisers, and it's made sense to, switch them on up and get 2 proper lines going. It was announced that we would be getting 2 new Tier 10s, which is kind of weird because, yeah, sure, we need a new light cruiser at Tier 10, and we got the Nevsky for that, but why did we need a new Tier 10 heavy cruiser? The Moskva is most certainly a heavy cruiser, and a very good one at the time, and in my opinion today, still a very, very, very good cruiser. But for whatever reason, we're made the decision to remove the Moskva from the Soviet tech tree and put her into the armory as a coal ship. And then we got the Petra Pavlovsk, the bane of many a player's existence. Now, in my humble opinion, the Moskva is actually a better all-around cruiser than the Petra Pavlovsk. Certainly there are some things that the Petra does a lot better than the Moskva, but for a cruiser and doing what a cruiser is supposed to do, I do believe the Moskva is the better boat. And today I'm going to explain why. And we're just going to also take a look at the Moskva, how she plays today and how she's aged since her removal from the tech tree. And let's go ahead and look at her stats. Now, do keep in mind the stats I'm reading off to you are with the commander skills that I showed at the beginning of this footage along with the module build as well. So do keep that in mind. These are not her base stats. Now, would I recommend you use this build for like everything? Not really, probably not the best competitive build, but for a random battles build, it is the build that I run and has been working out quite well for me and my Moskva. And yes, I do have Kuznetsov on here, and that's the good thing about Moskva being moved into the special ship category. You can move commanders to and from her at will with no retraining, so that's a nice plus of her being removed. And that is, kind of a good thing for those of us that had Moskva before she was removed from the tech tree, is that we now have essentially a free Tier 10 premium ship. And this is a very old ship too, one that many a player had, so many a player got a free Tier 10 premium ship when this happened, so that's kind of a plus side to it, but still the move in my mind doesn't make much sense. Anyway, now her stats. Alright, again, this is with my module and commander build on. So she has 69,900 hit points, nice. 28% torpedo protection damage reduction, and with her armor scheme, this makes her one hell of a tanky ship. Now, her armor layout is, well, like just about every other large Soviet ship. By that I mean the Stalingrad, even the Kremlin, the Slava, they all share this armor scheme, and the Petra Pavlovsk does too. Now, the Slava has thinner armor, but she still maintains this armor scheme, and a lot thinner. Actually, ironically, I think it's actually the same thickness as Moskva's, but she doesn't have the full-on wraparound bow that the Moskva does. Now, anyway, the Petra, this is where the big difference between the Petra and the Moskva kicks in. So, the Moskva and the Petra have a similar armor scheme, but the Petra sits much lower in the waterline, and survivability is something that the Petra certainly does a lot better than, well, not only the Moskva, but just about every single other Tier 10 ship, including battleships, because of her waterline just being so ridiculously low. She has such a small freeboard, she's almost a submarine. But the Moskva does sit high up in the water like every other large Soviet ship, including the Stalingrad and the Kremlin. Now, the Kremlin doesn't sit quite as high up out the water as the Moskva does. I mean, it's still a big target, a much longer target than the Moskva, but the Moskva sits up high out the water. But it's a pretty good armor scheme for the way that the ship is meant to be played, which is normally in a bow-in position near an island, keeping your sides covered, or in a position to where the enemy team can't get at your sides. With that wraparound 60mm bow, yeah, it's a really, really tough ship when in the right position. Now, you don't have to be perfectly bow on either. I'm sorry, it's a 50mm bow, not a 60. Not that that makes too much of a difference. I mean, it's above the threshold of the 18 and 20-inch guns, so you're going to be bouncing those shells either way, either from bow on or angled. And in the footage you're seeing in the background right now, there's several times I bounce shots from several large, very large caliber guns when I'm angled, and it's very nice to have that happen in a ship like this. So she's incredibly tanky, but of course not as tanky as the Petra. Petra does take that win in that category if you're comparing the two. So her guns, this is where she shines a lot better than the Petra. Shines a lot better and a lot brighter. So with the build that I have on these guns, you get a 9.1 second reload time on these 9 220mm guns. They have a 180 time of 32.7 seconds, maximum dispersion of 155 meters. Her HE shells have an 18% chance of causing a fire, which is really good on a ship that has a 9.1 second reload time. So she's not exactly, like Smolensk or the British cruisers in terms of fire damage, but she can certainly set a few fires. And when she's in a very good place, like we just mentioned with her bow armor, setting fires every 9 seconds potentially, she's quite the annoyance to deal with. And plus, because of the caliber of the guns, she has a 37mm pin, no need for IFHE there, so she pins most of the, well, of course, if you're talking about like the Kremlin and her deck armor, but she pins 32. That's the important threshold to pass when you're a high tier cruiser. Now her AP is of course her just absolute shining aspect of her guns. She gets that good old Soviet bias AP, coming flying out the barrels at 985 meters a second for both the AP and HE, with a maximum shell damage of 6,090 with heavy AP equipped. And again, a 9-second reload time. And of course, it's Soviet AP. It's got that great flat angles, great pins, great fuse time, to where you just be blasting just about everything, including battleships, light cruisers, heavy cruisers. Destroyers, of course, you want to switch to the HE on that. But even then, like if you have the AP loaded, it will hurt them quite a bit, but of course HE is better. And again, with a 9-second reload time too, spewing that out every 9 seconds. And this is where, in my opinion, she does a lot better than the Petra Pavlovsk. Now, the Petra Pavlovsk has the same caliber of guns, but she has a 13.5 second reload time, even with the main battery mod 3 equipped. She still does not out DPM the Moskva. With the main battery mod 3 equipped, which is the reload model, she only has an 11.9 second reload time on those guns. And two, the guns of Moskva are just much more accurate. The Petra, if you haven't played the Petra since, well, when she was in testing, or if you haven't seen the Petra much since she's left testing, you still might be under the impression that the Petra is this ship that can sit in the back of the map in Citadel battleships with cruiser AP, and that is very much not the case anymore. Now, yes, if you do hit certain battleships in the right spot with your AP, you will Citadel them, but you have to be at close range with the Petra. Petra has trouble hitting targets past 13 kilometers, which isn't very long range by tier 10 standards, and you have a 3-second longer load time on your guns with the same main battery build, and your guns are less accurate. But the Moskva, her guns are much more accurate, they have a faster load time, and she's got the same AP as Petra. So this means you can be getting better AP hits at range with the Moskva more often than the Petra. And this is where she really shines. Her guns are absolutely fantastic. They're so good you could almost replace this Stalingrad with the ship in competitive if Stalingrad gets banned, which is what many players do in competitive. It's a wonderful Stalingrad stand-in. Now, of course, it's not going to be absolutely deleting ships in 1 or 2 salvos like Stalingrad does in competitive, but it fulfills almost the same role, and not as well, again, with the blapping ability, but in terms of making ships suffer if they show broadside, yes, she can, especially with the quick follow-up shots she can get with her guns. Alright, secondary armament, not much to write about here. This is more just providing to the AA 130mm guns. You get 8 of them and 4 dual turrets. Her AA, it's there. It has an A rating of 79 without anything built into it. And you'll see in the match that you're watching right now, I do get attacked by a CV. It's the Chikalovs, the Soviet CVs. So they don't have the toughest planes ever, of course, with the no heal and the low health and the low speed of the planes. So I do get quite a few of them shot down. But again, it's nothing really special. It's definitely not an AA boat. You can equip DFAA on it, but I don't. I think Hydra's better for the way that you play Moskva, which is normally bow into the enemy team with an island on either side of you, and the Hydra is very useful for making sure there's not going to be surprise torpedoes coming at you from any odd angles. And of course, if you do need to push smoke or anything, Hydra is a very useful thing to have. Now, maneuverability with the speed flag on, she has a maximum speed of 36.2 knots, and she has, of course, the massive Soviet turning circle of 1050 meters and a rush shift time of 10.9 seconds. Concealment, she's okay here. I do have, of course, the concealment module and the concealment skill equipped. You have a 14.1 kilometer concealment. Not the worst concealment of these large Soviet cruisers, but not the best either. But it's enough to where when you're playing her like one plays her, which is, again, sitting on an island bound to the enemy team, you shouldn't be up in the front, especially in the opening minutes of the match. It's enough to work with. So that's the Moskva stats. How does she play? Like I've said several times already, bow in is when the ship's at its strongest in terms of tanking, but that's also a very easy mistake to make, going bow in too early. And if you do go bow in too early, you're stuck in that position because you cannot turn and show your sides, because that's how Moskvas die in 1 or 2 hits. You guys have seen me absolutely just wreck Moskvas several dozen times, probably just in the past couple of weeks, and some of the background footage that I've been showing, because they are one of the easiest ships to citadel with battleships if they show you their broadside. It's right up there with like Yoshino and Stalingrad too, of course. So you have to go either bow out or bow in when someone fires at you. You can't just say, "Oh no, I'll be all right. They'll miss, or I'll only eat a citadel or 2." No, you're probably going to lose like a third to half your health in one salvo if you do that. Not saying that you can do that in any other cruiser. That's wise in any other cruiser. It's just an especially dangerous thing with the Soviet large cruisers, unless of course you're the Petra. So going bow in is one of the easiest things you can do to mitigate that, but it's also pretty dangerous. You want to go bow out until you can get into a good position, which is a position that has your friendly team around you, one where you're not absolutely just facing down like half of the enemy team. If you can leave that situation and relocate somewhere else to where you have a better shot at the enemy team, that's the ideal thing to do. Or just stay in the back, bow out, stern in, and just bide your time until you can get into a good position. Now, when you are in a good position, you are probably one of the most annoying ships for the enemy team to deal with. The only way to deal with a Moskva that's in a good position is to absolutely just focus him down with everything that your team's got. And if the Moskva player was a wise player, like I just mentioned, and isn't in a place where there's, half the enemy team sitting in front of him, they can easily get shots at him, this ship can easily tank 2 or 3 ships at a time in its position and just not care. Keep in mind, too, that the Moskva has cruiser burn time, not the 60-second battleship burn time. So it's a freaking tough ship to deal with. And 2, when it's in that position defending a cap, like I am in this video, you've got radar, that 12-kilometer Soviet radar, which if you build into it with just the commander skill, lasts for 33 seconds now. That is an eternity on Soviet radar. And that's just with the commander skill. That is not with the radar module, which would increase that by a further 20%. So in terms of defending a cap, this is one of the best cruisers to do that in. And you've got your guns with you too. 9-second reload on these Soviet guns with great velocity, great firing arcs, fantastic AP, and decent HE. So this ship can make a DD trying to cap a cap. It can make his life absolute hell, and it often does in clan battles. It's a fantastic ship for that. Now, of course, too, when it is stuck bowing, like I've said, that's it. You're there until either all the enemies in front of you are dead, or if you're really smart, you have an escape route, how you're going to get out of the situation if it's a bad situation. Do you have some islands behind you that you can back up behind, get turned around, and get running away from the cap? Because again, it's a pretty fast cruiser at 36 knots. So if you can get turned around safely, using island cover or using your concealment, which doesn't have the best concealment in the world, but if you can get far enough away to get turned around, yeah, you can boogie on out of there. And when you're stern into the enemy team, sure, you're not going to get wrecked like you are when you're side on to them, so you're not going to lose all your health in 1 or 2 shots, but it's a bit chunky ship from the stern. It's not the most maneuverable thing ever, too, with that turning radius, but it's a lot better than just getting stuck bow in and getting just farmed to death without being able to do anything. But again, too, it is a really tanky ship, so if you are bowing, doing, kind of like a Last Samurai stand, you can do a lot of damage before you go down, too. Now, why do I think this is better than the Petra Pavlovsk? So, this ship is more all around than the Petro. The Petro's gimmick is that it's just the most like cockroachy cruiser that we have right now. It sits so darn low on the waterline. It's such a skinny target too from the air that, well, maybe now that they changed the way the bombs fall, it's probably a bit more prone to death by CV, but it's just so designed to just live when it shouldn't be living because of its armor profile, how low it sits in the waterline and all that. But to do that, it gives up its guns, which a cruiser's primary job is to deal damage. The Petro really struggles to do that outside of 13 kilometers. And yes, absolutely. If you get within 13 kilometers of a Petro, your day is going to be very, 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 very much ruined by its AP. Because, again, it's got the same AP as the Moskva, which is that Soviet bias AP with the great velocity, the great pins, the great fuse time, and all that jazz. But just staying 13 kilometers away from a Petro is enough to really, really mitigate its damage. Its HE is really not that great. Especially with the lower fire time, longer reload time than the Moskva. And again, the accuracy is terrible outside 13 kilometers. The Moskva can reliably hit targets up to 20 kilometers. And as you should have seen all in the beginning of this video, it still packs quite the punch. And plus 2, it still is a very tanky ship, the Moskva. It's not like it's this brittle ship that you sneeze on it and it explodes. It's a good ship. It's a good tanky ship and a great commander trainer for Stalingrad if you're planning on getting Stalingrad. But the Petro just, sure, it's a one-trick pony. It's very good at that one trick. And if you need a cruiser on a flank to just survive, sure, a Petro is a nice cruiser to have there. But if you need a cruiser that can survive, keep the cap protected, just be an absolute pain in the side of the enemy team when it's in the right position because it can deal damage from its position up to its maximum range consistently at a good fire rate, and it's just an all-around thorn in the side of the enemy team, the Moskva is the ship to go with, and is an armory ship that I would highly recommend you guys get if you haven't gotten like the Pommern already. So that's the Moskva. That's my opinions on the Moskva, and this has been a look back at the Moskva, the Tier 10 Soviet Special Cruiser. Heavy cruiser at that. Let me know what you guys think about the Moskva in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. When we did 30,000 subs, we just passed 28,800 a few days ago, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.